All right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and check my audio real quick. Hi, by the way, this is Amy from TicketForce coming at you live from INTIX in Dallas, Texas. I'm going to wait a couple more minutes here to have some more folks log in, but again, just wanted to check my audio. Please know there's that little chat section down in the panel. And then those of you who joined us before may know where that is, but go ahead and please put in there if you have the audio issues, and we'll try to solve it before you folks get started. Okay, thanks. We'll talk to you shortly. All right, hello again, everybody. This is Amy Johnson again from TicketForce coming at you from INTIX 2019 in Dallas, Texas. I'm going to wait maybe just a couple more minutes, let's say 2, for some folks on in. But just a reminder too, we are recording it today, so if you have any other folks that you'd like to share this with, it'll be available for you to share, I think right after the webinar is over, an email about a link. So again, I'm going to give you a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. All right, I'm getting the go-ahead that I should go ahead and get started. I don't want everybody to lose interest, I suppose. So hi again, Amy Johnson here from TicketForce, live here at INTIX 2019 on the trade show floor. We're at the TicketForce booth sitting here. I did have a request. Lynn wanted to say if anybody does tweet, make sure to use the hashtag INTIX 2019 so we can see those and follow those if you do have any feedback or questions. Again, thanks for joining us today. We are going to be recording this, so if you do have anybody from your staff or any coworkers that you'd like to share it with, you're more than welcome to do so after. Here with me, I do have Stephen Sunshine from TixTrack. Thank you so much today for joining me, Stephen. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and test your audio too while we're at it, right? Yeah, let's hope everybody can hear. Let me see real quick. I'll get some feedback and see if we can help you.
Thank you for having TixTrack be part of your webinar here from INTIX Live. It's great to be able to share some of our technology with all of your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so you guys know, oh wait, hold on. We're hearing that we can't hear you, so hang on just a second. I'll fix that for you. Hold on, please, everybody. No worries. All right, so while we have Stephen getting settled here, we're just going to have him join a different way so we can hear his audio, but I do want to just give a little quick intro while we wait for that. So again, he's joining us from a company called TixTrack, and just for all of our clients that are joining us today, so that you guys know, TixTrack is available on both the platforms that we do provide. I know sometimes with the product updates and product webinars, sometimes it's a little unclear what's available for which platform. So everything that we're looking at today in one way or another is available on all platforms, all of our solutions here. So if you're on the in-house platform, the enterprise product, you are able to utilize the TixTrack technology. TixTrack is a ticketing technology company. They were founded in 2008, and they're based in Santa Monica, California. They actually have additional offices in the UK and New Zealand. TixTrack products are focused on helping promoters, venue operators, sports teams, and other related industries to manage their inventory and ticket price to maximize distribution channels and ticket sales revenue. They have over 150 clients around the world. TixTrack is a leader in the revenue management and pricing tools for the ticketing industry. Stephen Sunshine, who joins me here today, is one of the original founders and the CEO. It looks like he's joined us.
Amy, thank you very much for having me. Great to be here at the INTIX floor and be able to share some of what we do at TixTrack with the TicketForce client base. So, I thought maybe before we jump in, I'm not sure if I'm sharing my screen, but maybe I'll give you a little bit more of a brief background of how we got into this business and what we try to do with to help out our clients, which are ultimately, hopefully, some TicketForce clients. As Amy said, we started back in 2008, and really our goal was to help clients better manage inventory and maximize revenue. And it was early in the days of dynamic pricing. In fact, I'm not even sure dynamic pricing was in everybody's vernacular yet. So what we did is we focused on building a suite of tools that first and foremost help people understand the status of their inventory, what's going on, so they could get better visibility on the exact status of their inventory. And from there, we migrated into tools that help understand how that inventory, the status of the inventory, implicates pricing. And in addition, we've built out tools that help manage channels, because part of the key to being effective in pricing strategies is to make use of all of your distribution channels as effectively as possible. So in prep for this conversation, Amy sent me some questions, one of which was, does it make sense to just lower prices if a show isn't selling well? And obviously there's no single answer, but in general what we find is that to truly maximize revenue, you really need to think about all the people that might be buying for your particular event and try to differentiate pricing along different channels so that you don't necessarily lower prices for somebody who's willing to pay full price, but at the same time you find a way to move inventory for somebody who may not be willing to pay for that same full price. So we always like to say that dynamic pricing is one tool in a pricing tool chest. For a lot of people, dynamic pricing has become a buzzword that somehow magically it's going to fix all pricing woes. I don't think that we would necessarily advocate that view, but it certainly can be a very effective way, along with things that I think everybody on the call already does in terms of promotions and using third-party channels to better align prices with demand, and really that's really what it all boils down to. So what I thought I'd do is show everybody just some examples of what can be done with TixTrack Professional, our revenue management tool, and then open the floor to questions either here at the venue or from the phone. And there's obviously a ton under the hood here, so I won't show you, I'll probably only show you 10% of what the tool does, but happy to entertain questions. So let me see if I can figure out how to share my screen. That might be the first challenge here. So hopefully that's working. You can let me know if eventually you can see my screen over there. All right, so I've got a thumbs up here in the INTIX. I'm going to go ahead. It's always challenging to show what a system can do because it means I'm showing somebody else's data. So what I'm going to do is just show you some quick examples of a client of ours. This is Staples Center. You can see from the dashboard here. So basically, if you logged in, each client would basically see only their own data. See, I chose Staples Center because it's a pretty active venue. Lots of events go on. Intermingled with this would probably be some sporting events, and those are separate clients of ours. So sometimes there's multiple tenants that use TixTrack Professional in the same venue. So what you're seeing here are non-sports events that are going to take place. These are, you can see here, I filtered for current events. That means things that are coming up. You can also change this to look at historical events. So this is also a very nice way of saving information about your historical shows. So just to take an example of a kind of event that probably isn't sold out, I'm guessing that Elton John and tomorrow probably doesn't have any inventory. It's probably not going to be that interesting, but I'm going to just go into here, show you an example of professional bull riders and what, for a single event, TixTrack Professional can do for you. So the idea here is a lot of ticketing systems don't have a very visual way to see revenue or see what's going on with inventory. So we have built a set of very simple tools that allow you to click through and see inventory. So these can all be saved. We've saved some here on the back end. This is what we call a visual audit. Fundamentally, what it does is it shows you the same kind of information that you would see in your standard audit, but in a PDF CAD accurate rendering of the venue. So this is, I think, what most people would expect in an audit, where you would have held, sold, opens, comps, killed seats, and this is the kind of thing that a promoter who's a rental at your venue might be interested in seeing. So this is one example. You can mouse over any of these seats, and you can get pop-up information about what is going on with this particular, with each individual seat. Some of the things that people use this for more typically are sold maps. So if you wanted to see the sold seats and look at them by, well, we can look at them by price. I'm guessing for this event there'll be lots and lots of prices because there's probably lots of discounting going on. But just to give you a sense of how easy it is to generate these views and get information about what's going on with the venue and your inventory. So here's now, for this upcoming event, all of the now just sold seats and the price that they've sold for. And you can see, as I suspected, there are lots and lots and lots of prices because of all the discounting that's happening. So if that's too much information, instead you wanted to see something a little bit simpler, you could maybe look at this information versus price level. So now we're not going to look at every single price, but just basically what's sold by the price level that it was originally in. And now it's a slightly simpler view. And this tool is really designed to allow venues or sports teams or promoters get a very quick but visual view of what's going on with their inventory. And it might sound simple, but really the beginning of good pricing strategy is understanding what things are, what seats are selling and how much they're selling for. And really, a lot of our clients use TixTrack Professional just as a better way of visualizing what's going on with their inventory. So again, there's pretty much an endless way that you can look at the data using for a single event. You can create charts to see how things are selling over time, because the tool is also saving data effectively every day as new sales information is coming in. So you can look at sales as a function of time as well. Let me just go back to show you some examples of that. So here's a simple example of some of the sales history over time that's occurred over the last month for this particular show. Pretty quiet. Well, this is actually now at a visual audit level. So you can see the held inventory is dropping, the sales are going up, and then using these filtering tools over here, you can look at any specific information you want. So that's some of the information you can get out of a single event. There's also a lot of tools that allow you to compare activity across multiple events. See if I can show you an example of that. So if we come back here and we just select as a comparison point these two events that are the same, professional bull rider events, you can see it now opens up a whole range of different things that you can look at. So one of the things that a lot of our clients like to look at is a heat map. This is essentially a frequency view. So how often is something happening? With only two events, it's not that terribly interesting, but if you had a long series of 5 or 6 shows that are occurring. So the first view just shows you whether a seat has sold once, it's sold twice, or not at all. So you get a sense of popularity of different locations. This is an indication of also pricing. So just to give a sense, you see these areas in the back of section 107 are selling multiple times. So this might be an indication that clients are viewing this as a positive pricing scenario because they're buying these seats in the back of 107. You can also look at things that are that's maybe a little bit more interesting by looking at these filtering. So you can actually look at these seats that are being sold by the average price that they're being sold at. So now If you are doing a lot of discounting, which is pretty typical of shows like this, you can drill down and see not what is the face value of the inventory, but actually what people are paying for the different seats in different locations. So again, before you ever get to dynamic pricing, this tool will provide a lot of information. So you can see in this back row, this particular seat on average is sold for $38.30. And in the row in front of it, it looks relatively comparable. But if we start to move down, well, it was like they're all selling at the same price. But anyway, you get the idea that this provides another way of looking at your data and seeing what people are actually paying for different seats in different locations. And you can do this also for historical events. So as an example, the Harlem Globetrotters are a client of ours. They use us on all their tours throughout most of their venues that they play in around the country. And the way that they use this tool is they first use the tool to scale events. Then they track all the sales in this tool as well. And then when they're getting ready to go play another, let's say next year's events, they come in and they look at the scaling. They look at how things sold versus that original scaling. And they decide whether or not to make pricing changes for the next time they're in a particular venue based on this historical data. So to just show you some of these other things that can be done, I'll go back to one of these events and I'll show you some of the scaling capabilities that also exist within the tool. This is something that somebody would use when they're just setting up a show potentially to try to figure out how to price an event. So again, if I go back and do one of these same events, we have these price plans over here. So I'm going to go and create a new price plan. And I'm going to give this a name, which I'm just going to call test for now. And I'm going to insert this new, and then I can create prices that I want to use. So I'm going to call this P1, and I'm not going to do very much of this because it does take a little bit of time. But let's say my first price is going to be $100. And then I'm going to go set a new price. That's P2 at $75. I'm going to insert that price. And then obviously you would create all the prices that you think are relevant here. And then the tool allows you to go in and color your venue with these different price points. And as you do that, you will actually be able to see what the impact is on your potential gross. It's a little slow here from the Wi-Fi connection I have here. So here we go.
It's kind of forecasting in a sense, right? Like without the actual sales, you're seeing your potential revenue without
exactly.
the sales.
So this is something that you would do when you're just starting to set up a show. As an example, either you're producing it yourself or you have a promoter coming in and they might have a target that they want to hit. So let's say I want to go in and create a new pricing rule here. So let's say I want to take so you can price this by sections, rows, or individual seats. So I'm going to just come in here and start pricing. So not sure why it's. Let me see if I can paint some seats here. Looks like my connection isn't so great. Oh, there we go. So it's starting. So you can see I started by painting seats. Maybe I'll move back to the section mode. So basically, what you would do is you just come through here and you'd click on your different sections, which doesn't seem to be working all that great. I apologize for that.
Our internet.
There we go. So it's kind of spotty. But as you can see, so I'm just going to insert this rule. I've priced a few seats here, and I'm going to insert that rule. You would, with a better connection, you would be able to do this a lot faster. But you can see I've priced the first 339 seats at $100 a piece, and you get a running total. So as an example now, if I wanted to create a new rule and I wanted to price these next set of seats at P2, and let's say I'm going to come back here and price some of these seats up in the premium section. I don't know why it's so slow to pick up these seats, but it is. They seem to be.
me if I zoom in a little bit. Maybe I can get it to behave.
It's because you're in the hot seat right now, Stephen. Something has to happen every time, right?
That could be. So let me see if I try to go back to the painting mode. Maybe it'll allow me to pick up some more of these seats. That looks a little bit better. So now if I insert that rule, you'll see now that we've added some P2 seats, 224 by painting those in at $75 a piece. So it's a pretty handy tool to be able to create this initial price plan. You can try different scenarios. It provides a way that you can work directly with a promoter, so you can share this information with a promoter if you choose to. You can export this as a PDF and share it that way with the promoter and get feedback. So when they come back and say, you know, I need to generate more revenue here, can you change all those T1 seats to $110 or maybe some subset of those? You can come back into this electronic tool, and with a couple of clicks, you can redo your scaling map, share it back with the promoter, and facilitate that initial pricing a lot more efficiently. And as I was saying, a lot of our promoter clients use this tool to create the initial pricing, and that way when they are done with a show, they have both this digital record of how they priced the venue to begin with, as well as all the information about how the show sold. So it makes them much more capable of deciding how they want to change the pricing plan the next time they come into a venue. So that's yet another tool that exists in TixTrack Professional. We call this our scaling tool. And then maybe I'll just briefly touch on dynamic pricing, and then we can go from there. So the tool does have a series of dynamic pricing tools built in as well. There are different tools depending on the kind of event and the kind of venue. So I'll describe a couple of them, and then I'll show you one in a little bit more detail. So we have one that's based primarily on secondary market data. So we have interfaces with a number of secondary market sites that allows us to pull information from those secondary markets, so we can understand what pricing looks like for the resale market. And obviously for a lot of primary vendors, essentially the secondary market becomes a competitor to them being able to sell primary inventory. So that's one tool that we have. I won't show that here, just in the interest of time, but it, again, basically the tool accesses inventory from the secondary market. It has some pretty sophisticated algorithms that cull that data to really provide insight as to what is the best priced inventory in the secondary market, so you can focus on the real competition, because a lot of the inventory that's placed in the secondary market is priced at kind of ridiculously high prices that will probably never sell. And then you get a pretty good sense of, you know, what are the other prices, what are the other ways that somebody interested in the primary in buying a ticket could buy. And they could buy from you buying a primary ticket, or they could buy from the secondary market. So that's one tool we have. A second tool that we have for dynamic pricing is really what we call a tiered pricing model. So this allows you to define tiers of pricing before an event ever goes on sale. We have a number of clients that use this tool as a way of encouraging early buying. So effectively what it does is it allows you to set up your pricing as in the scaling tool I showed you, and then set up price increases that will occur on a periodic basis as more and more tickets sell at each of those initial price levels. So in that instance, we're using information about the either the rate of sale or the number of tickets sold at each price level to decide whether or not to increase prices as an event plays out. And then the final tool we have is one that's based on historical data, kind of historical historical sales data within a venue. So I thought that might be helpful to just give you a sense of the level of sophistication that we have behind the hood here. And I'll just quickly show you an example of how this works. So as I said, we actually save all the historical data that comes into TixTrack Professional, and typically that data is coming in at least daily. So what you're seeing here is in green, blue-green is one event that is playing out. So the bottom axis is the days to a show.
the left axis of the revenue generated so far to date. All the gray curves are historical data that's played out in this particular venue. And the blue curve is a current event that we're trying to predict against, or predict what our prices should be. And right now, this event is 56 days before the event. And so far, it's sold $111,000 worth of ticket revenue. Right now, the way this event is priced, the maximum that this event could produce is $210,000, a little over $210,000. That's the current potential. But based on all this historical data, we've been able to determine that this event should generate $237,000, or it has the potential of generating $237,000 with appropriate pricing. So we take this information and we convert it into price recommendations at every price level, which is shown here. So this is an example of the dynamic pricing capability that's also built into TixTrack Pro. And I would say that people use this tool ranging from the very simplest things I showed you initially, which is just trying to understand a little bit better what's selling in their venue, what's the average price, how are things selling, and then using their own logic to deduce what to do with that information, all the way through to full dynamic pricing, where they're using our automated pricing tools to help them decide how to change prices. I will reiterate that these are all kind of mathematically oriented. We don't have a ton of visibility on advertising campaigns, what a venue is planning to do or a promoter is planning to do in the future. So I think it's important to understand that dynamic pricing has its limitations. We can obviously provide back information based on the trends we see and how things are playing out. But we would argue that it's important to also understand the big picture. Obviously, if we're recommending, as an example, to reduce prices, but there's a huge marketing campaign that's going to launch, you might want to factor that into whether or not you choose to lower prices or how that marketing campaign is going to impact sales. And as an outside technology company that just has technology that they're bringing to bear, that's insight that we don't necessarily have in advance of making our price recommendations. So we're kind of unusual in the dynamic pricing world, I think, in that we don't believe that dynamic pricing is a panacea and a fix-it-all. We think it can be very helpful to providing additional guidance as to, as an example, which price levels might be the most receptive to price increases, and even the magnitude that those price increases might be able to sustain. But we also believe that it has to be used in a judicious way and within the context of everything that a promoter or a venue operator might know that software by itself wouldn't know. So that's a very high-level brief introduction. I'm happy to answer questions, go into more detail as appropriate, and I would welcome people to get individual demonstrations if that's helpful.
Absolutely. I do want to say, too, just real quick, Stephen, it's funny that you keep bringing up the limitations, because I feel like, we're speaking with our clients over the years, I feel like this is definitely going to solve a lot of their problems. I kind of I wrote down the fact that you said, we're not going to solve all these problems, it's very unusual, but I feel like, to me, it's a little bit of a back to basics type thing. What we're using, tags, pixels, ad campaigns, Google AdWords, conversion rates, all of that information, like you said, is very helpful, but it's not 100% solution to keeping tickets out of secondary market, selling more seats, maximizing your revenue. I feel like this is a very back to basics approach with the original goal of things like dynamic pricing. So that was incredible. So thank you so much for showing everybody. I do want to ask real quick, is that you mentioned that you do have secondary market data feeding in. Is that just available to anybody that's already using TixTrack Pro, or do they have to have like an additional, agreement with them too as well, or is that available to them?
No, that's available. It's only available for your own specific venues. That's why I said it's important to understand that these tools apply differently for different venues, because there are places that have very little secondary market activity at all, and then there are other ones that basically their entire venue is sold 2 or 3 times in the secondary market. So part of what we do is try to help clients understand the best sources for information and how to use those different sources for information. But there can be a direct link to secondary market data, either for dynamic pricing purposes or for just information about what else is going out there in the marketplace. And to your point about advertising and digital marketing, I think these solve different problems. Digital marketing and retargeting and those kinds of things are tools that allow you to go either reach back out to somebody who fell out of the buying process or you think might be a reasonable target. And obviously, the goal is to get as many eyeballs as possible to be interested in your product. But at the end of the day, that has to then be married to pricing and whether or not that's a uniform group of buyers or whether those are very, very different buyers. And these kinds of analytical tools can be used to help you understand, are there more than one kind of ticket buyer out there? And if so, does it then make sense to market to those two different kinds of ticket buyers differently? And that, I think, is really a key to maximizing revenue, because dropping prices or raising prices uniformly is never the right answer.
Right. Well, and I think too, we had recently had a webinar about, we called it pricing wars, and it was a very hot topic where it was saying, price it too low, the secondary market is flooded, or people bought too early, couldn't buy them, that type of thing. So it does cause quite a bit of problems. Would you say that tickets selling quickly initially is a good thing or a bad thing?
I think proper pricing is the panacea. I think it might sound self-serving, but if you put your prices out too low to begin with, then brokers are incredibly sophisticated. They're going to buy all that inventory. They have very sophisticated tools to do that, and before you know it, all your inventory will be gone. So there's no way to maximize the revenue for your event. The only people who are going to maximize the revenue for the event at that point are all the brokers who've already bought all of our inventory. Now, there are, I think, good strategies in terms of pre-sales to gauge demand, because sometimes it is very hard to gauge demand for a brand new event coming into your venue for the first time. So I think smart coupling of pre-sale activities to gauge demand and then using that to set future prices before you've sold everything at a proper price point is smart. Within this tool base, we also have what we call flex pricing tools that allow you to dynamically price during an on sale. So I think pricing can be very sophisticated, so that if you have priced too low to begin with, you can quickly move prices up before all the inventory is gobbled up at a price point that was actually too low. But I think at the end of the day, the right way to make sure that people, fans are served and promoters are served is to really get the prices right, or as close to right out of the door as possible.
I think that was going to be maybe one of my next questions too, was kind of who are we trying to get it right for? Initially, are we looking at the artist? Are we looking at the sports team, the customer, the venue? Where should folks start when they want to think, am I getting it right?
Yeah, and I think you have to cater to all those groups to some degree. I mean, I would say from our standpoint, we try to emphasize the consumer and the promoter. The promoter, because they have the skin in the game. It could be the venue promoter, but they're the ones who've invested in putting this show on. And to ultimately have all the benefit of that go to a broker probably isn't the right way to have that work. And obviously the consumer, I mean, we do recognize that people want to be able to go see an event, and to get priced out completely doesn't make any sense. I do say from all the work we've done, it's almost impossible to prevent a broker from buying inventory at a price point that's too low. So the price has to be roughly in line with the value, unless you use other ticketing technology to prevent resale, like delayed delivery or other techniques that try to make it difficult to transfer that.
And that is another technique that I think needs to be used in combination with proper pricing to help combat the resale market. Not that the resale market is evil. I mean, the resale market also serves a great function, especially when challenge is moving inventory. So these all have to be used together.
And that's what I was kind of thinking as you were talking. Was an unexpected benefit that is helpful using data that the brokers are allowed to get, and hopefully putting tickets in the hands of folks that will actually attend. So that's awesome. But I also do want to talk about, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. You came up during the webinar, I mentioned the pricing war that we recently had about slow ticketing, releasing inventory gradually, and using that in combination with the dynamic pricing type model, just being very transparent about your pricing strategy ahead of time so that I may be, Adele's #1 fan, but I don't need to buy the VIP. Oh, I can just get price level 1 and those will be available later. Any of your clients kind of messing with that at all?
I would say all of our clients worry about, let's just call it dressing the house, appropriate timing of delivery of inventory. It does add a whole nother layer of challenge, because when you think that it might be a hot selling show and you keep a lot of inventory off sale at the beginning, if in fact it's not such a hot selling show and all that inventory becomes available, you've kind of done yourself a disservice. So there are these challenges, I think, of properly gauging the demand, and then it's certainly reasonable to use those kinds of tactics. I would say mostly what we see is I would say a feathering of the house, I'll call it that, where maybe every other row is placed on hold initially, so that you're not trying to sell, in the case of a Staples Center, 20,000 tickets all at once. Maybe the initial capacity is 10,000, but it's not in bulk areas. It's not like, well, I'm not going to sell any P1. It's kind of uniformly distributed, so that even if you do end up in a world where a show didn't sell as well as you had expected, visually it looks better than it might have actually been. So I think we see more of that than keeping large portions of the house out there.
Absolutely. I think any venue is going to be like, wait, what? You're doing what with my inventory? Keeping way too much of it's probably a little bit scary. I do want to answer just real quick one question that just come through, and I do want to encourage anybody listening right now. You can go ahead and type in any questions for Stephen or I. Kathleen did ask if this was available for the mobile platform because she missed the beginning. And yes, so it's available on both of our solutions. TixTrack Pro, in one way or another, is available through both of our solutions. So no matter what product you are on, you can have the tools available to you that we looked at today. But is there any other questions? Doesn't look like there's any other questions. Stephen, I just muted you just real quick because there was a group that passed by behind you, so it was a little noisy. But I do want to thank everybody for joining us today. I do want to say, Stephen, we mostly get no questions when the folks that are joining me do such a great job in explaining everything. I really enjoyed listening to you and obviously taking a look at TixTrack Pro, knowing our clients and knowing what their goals are. I think this is going to be a great tool for each and every one of them, to be honest. Would you say small and mid-sized venues up to big arenas, large events, do you think anybody kind of can benefit from TixTrack Pro?
Yeah, we have a huge range of clients, and I think everybody benefits. As I said, I can only demo a very small portion, so there's lots of different tools. There are obviously smaller venues, which are largely rentals, and the way that those venues typically use this tool is to provide information in a very easy way back to promoters. What we see is a lot of box offices are being
ask for sold maps every day, and these are being manually created, so it's a huge cost savings. Some of the mid-sized venues are also using this tool to help with staffing. So by understanding where people are going to be sitting, they either deploy concessions or security or even cleanup staff based on that type of information. So we've actually been surprised by the creativity of venue operators and how they can use this tool. It was really designed initially primarily as a revenue management tool to help maximize ticket revenue, but it turns out that it is being used by a lot of venues to manage that venue more efficiently as well. So, and I will encourage all the listeners today to feel free to reach out to us directly or through TicketForce to set up an individual demo where we could get into more details and kind of talk specifically about the venue that's interested in how this tool might apply more directly to that particular venue at that size.
That's awesome. So again, as Stephen mentioned, feel free to get in touch with me or your representative or somebody on the TicketForce team or with TixTrack directly. I'll coordinate with Stephen how we thought that would work, but we'll figure it out. But I absolutely encourage you to get in contact with them if you see anything that you like to today. Get a little bit more in depth if you'd like to do that as well. But I absolutely encourage you to use this tool again for either product, which is great. So if I don't see any other questions coming in, so if you do think of anything else, please feel free to email me. I'm Amy@TicketForce.com. I will be back in the office too on Thursday if it's easier to call me. I can also send out Stephen's information probably later too to everybody in attendance. But again, feel free to get in touch with them if you think of any questions. After that, please let us know. Keep an eye on our social media for the next few days. The TicketForce team is here at INTIX. We're in Dallas, Texas. So we got some client services folks. We got sales here. Brad and Lynn are here. And we'll be here with a couple of other clients hanging out and doing some pretty cool industry stuff. So we're excited. But thank you again, Stephen. I really do appreciate it. I think we had a great time today.
Thank you, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to show your folks our tool. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.